the thing in between, the nameless whisper from the silent valley. I remember the day I decided to head to Drakmora like it was yesterday. It was early 2019, and I was struggling with my PhD thesis in anthropology at Delhi University. My name is Tenzin Norbu, 29 years old, a Bhutanese guy with Tibetan roots, raised in Thimphu but always drawn to the ancient legends of the Himalayas. My life back then was pretty ordinary. Wake up early, black coffee, then dive into the library, devouring books on shamanic rituals and entities born from collective belief. My thesis focused on thought forms, things like tulpas in Tibetan culture, where human thoughts and faith can create a living entity, like a shadow from the mind. I'd interviewed dozens of lamas in monasteries, collected stacks of old documents, but I was missing something real, something tangible. I needed a field case, a place where a thought form wasn't just a story, but something still lingering. Then a colleague sent me an old, yellowed article from the 1980s. It mentioned Drakmora, a remote village in northern Bhutan, near the Tibetan border. According to rumors, the villagers had created a thought form centuries ago. But it wasn't the guardian deity they intended. Instead, it was something vague, terrifying, called the thing in between. The article skimmed the surface, but it was enough to spark my curiosity. I figured this was my golden ticket to make my thesis stand out. So I packed my bags, a digital recorder, a worn leather notebook, some reference books, and a backpack full of personal essentials. I took 2 weeks off, hoping it would be enough to gather data. Before leaving, I double-checked my medical records. I had a history of mild insomnia and occasional auditory hallucinations, faint whispers in my head, but the doctor said it was just stress. I kept it hidden, didn't want anyone thinking I wasn't fit for research. The journey wasn't easy. From Thimphu, I flew to Poro, then hired an old jeep to bump along the winding mountain roads, thick with fog and rock slides. The driver, an old local named Wangchuk, who'd spent his life in the mountains, chatted about snow demons, like yetis and wandering spirits on high passes. When I mentioned Drakmora, he went quiet for a moment, then shook his head. "You should turn back, young man. That village isn't for outsiders. They have their own rules and things." Silent, I brushed it off with a smile, figuring he was superstitious, like most Highlanders. It took us nearly 2 days to reach the base of the mountains leading into the valley. Wangchuk dropped me at a narrow pass where the fog thickened, repeating his warning, "Don't stare at the dogs too long." I nodded politely and hiked in, backpack heavy on my shoulders. The air changed immediately. Fog enveloped everything like a thick white veil, blurring visibility to just a few meters. The wind was light but bone-chilling, carrying the scent of damp earth and wild grass. I trekked for about 3 hours along a narrow trail, past low bushes and shallow streams. Finally, Drakmora emerged like an ancient painting faded by time. The village nestled deep in the valley, surrounded by towering peaks, isolated from the outside world. Wooden houses squatted low, with steep roofs covered in green moss, adorned with faded prayer flags fluttering in the breeze. No urban noise, no cars, no bustling chatter, just silence, broken only by the occasional whisper of wind. My phone lost signal completely. The bars vanished like they'd never been there. Electricity came only a few hours each evening from an old diesel generator in the village center. The population was maybe a few hundred, mostly farmers growing barley and herding yaks, dressed in traditional robes, cho and go. The first person I met was an old woman weaving cloth on her porch. She squinted at me, then pointed up the hill to a small temple. "Lama Dorje," she said curtly, her voice raspy. I thanked her and climbed the rocky slope to the temple. Lama Dorje was the village's eldest monk, probably in his 80s. He was meditating before a Buddha altar, one eye blind, his face wrinkled like ancient bark, wrapped in a frayed red robe. I introduced myself in the local jonka, explaining my research on thought forms and Himalayan legends. He stared at me for a long moment, assessing, then nodded and invited me inside. We sat around a small hearth, sipping warm, salty yak butter tea. "You're here for the thing in between, aren't you?" he asked, his voice gravelly, avoiding the window where a few dogs lay sleeping. I was surprised he used that term right away, not thought form like I'd expected. I nodded, probing for details. He spoke slowly, like recounting a folk tale. Centuries ago, Drakmora suffered famine and plague. The villagers performed a grand ritual, inspired by Tibetan lamas, to create a guardian deity from collective faith. They gathered, meditated, chanted mantras, visualizing a powerful protector, but it failed due to discord. Some doubted, others feared. Instead of a god, They birthed something amorphous, nameless, existing only through perception. "It's not a ghost, not a demon," he said, lowering his voice. "It's the void between thought and reality. It dwells in the spaces between, in glances, in silence." I scribbled notes furiously, my heart racing with excitement. This was thesis gold. But then I noticed the first oddity, the dogs. The village was full of them, shaggy-furred hounds with sharp eyes, roaming everywhere. They lounged under porches, trailed children, even sat around the temple like silent sentinels. But they didn't bark. Absolute silence. Not a growl, not a yelp, even when a stranger like me appeared. I asked Lama Dorje about it. He turned his back to a dog near the door, whispering, the unspoken rule of the village. If a dog stares at you too long, don't stare back. I chuckled, thinking it a joke. I'm a scientist, skeptical of the supernatural. I rationalized it, maybe a local breed or special training. But he shook his head. Dogs see what humans can't. They see the thing in between. If you stare back, you acknowledge it, and it clings to you. The first few days in Drakmora passed normally, at least on the surface. I stayed with a local family named Shearing, a middle-aged farmer with a wife and 2 kids. Their home was simple, wooden floors, a central fire pit, and a small corner for guests. They welcomed me politely, but I sensed distance, stolen glances, curt replies when I asked about the village. By day, I wandered, interviewing locals. They talked about daily life, farming, herding, bon festivals, but mentioned Thoughtform or the thing in between, and they'd go silent, exchange looks, and change the subject. Only Lama Dorje spoke, always with a warning tone, and he always turned away when dogs were near. I met Pema on the 3rd day. She was an 80-year-old girl, Shearing's youngest daughter. She couldn't speak, born mute, her mother said, but she was bright, communicating through gestures and drawings on scrap paper or dirt. She followed me curiously, fascinated by my recorder. Once, I played her a recording of mountain winds. She grinned and drew a picture. Faceless figures, just bodies and limbs, heads empty voids, standing amid circles of dogs. I signed to her. "What is this?" She pointed to the space behind me, then shook her head, eyes wide with fear. I figured autism or vivid imagination, but the drawing unsettled me slightly. Nights were when things shifted. Power lit from 7 to 10 p.m. Then the village plunged into total darkness. No streetlights, just faint moonlight through fog. And the silence, a terrifying quiet. No insects chirping, no strong winds howling, no wildlife sounds, just your own breathing. I'd lie on the hard wooden bed, trying to sleep, but insomnia gnawed at me. The auditory hallucinations returned, fainter than usual. Between, like someone repeating from deep inside my skull. I'd turn on the recorder bedside, capturing room sounds overnight for later analysis. Morning playback, just my labored breaths and faint wind through cracks. Gradually, the dogs drew my focus. Their silence was unnatural, but their stares piercing. During walks, a few would trail me, eyes fixed but voiceless. Once, interviewing a farmer about crops, a dog approached, sat meters away, staring at the space behind me. The farmer paled, stood, and left without a word. I turned, nothing, just fog. But my scalp tingled, like breath on my neck. I recalled the Lama's rule, don't stare at the dogs. But curiosity is a researcher's curse. I glanced at the dog for a second. Its eyes gleamed, pupils dilated like spotting something invisible. That night, sleep was worse. I dreamed of standing in the village center, surrounded by hundreds of dogs sitting still, eyes on me. No barks, but their gazes reflected something. A black void, a tear in reality. I woke midnight, sweating. Flashlight on the room's old mirror reflected me. But oddly, my shadow blurred under the yellow candlelight. Fatigue, weak light, I thought. Recorder ran all night. Morning, listen. Faint whispers, not mine. Between the thing in between. In ancient Tibetan, a language I knew only basics from books. I replayed, thinking glitch, but no. The murmurs repeated, ghostly as wind. I started doubting myself. Hallucinations from my medical history, or the village warping my mind. I dug deeper, unease be damned. One afternoon, I followed Pema to the village edge. She led me to a small forest with ancient stones etched in faded Tibetan script. She drew in the dirt while I observed, noting. Suddenly, a pack of dogs gathered, sitting silently around us, eyes fixed behind me. No barks, just stares. My heart pounded. I turned, nothing, thicker fog. But the sensation of someone standing close, touchable, made me shiver. Pema looked at me, sketched quickly. Me there, faceless, dogs encircling. She grabbed my hand, signaling to run back. That evening, I returned to the temple for Lama Do. He was meditating but opened his eyes as I entered. I told him about the dogs, the whispers. He sighed. You've stared at them now. The thing in between knows you. He detailed the old ritual. Villagers under full moon, chanting, visualizing. But a young Lama betrayed, doubting, breaking unity. Result, a void entity, formless, soundless, unreflecting in mirrors. It exists through awareness, through animal gazes, especially dogs. It grows stronger when many know but don't name it, he said. And if you leave, you carry it, spreading through belief. Pema grew attached. She'd sit by me as I noted, gifting drawings. They got stranger, faceless people, silent dogs, a central void. Once, she drew me faceless amid dogs. I signed, why? She pointed behind me, covered her eyes, shook violently. My blood ran cold. Nights I heard light footsteps, unreal, but like someone pacing the room, circling the bed. Dogs outside sat still, staring through the open window, eyes glowing in dark. Tension built. One planned a few more days for data, but it worsened. Days. Fog choked the air, hiding something. Villagers avoided me, whispering behind. One evening, power cut early. I noted by oil lamp flicker. Suddenly, village dogs massed outside, dozens sitting silent, eyes on me through wooden walls. I stepped out, flashlight sweeping. They stared at the space behind me. Rule, don't stare back. But fear and curiosity mixed. I locked eyes with one. Its pupils widened, like something approaching. Nothing behind. But that night, dream voice mine, saying the thing in between has come. Morning recorder. My voice, whispering ancient Tibetan, unlearned fluency. It chooses you as home. Silence will follow. True panic. Lama Dorje's final warning. You've invited it. Now it's with you. Don't take it to the world. Pema's last drawing. Me faceless, amid silent dogs. A black void swallowing. I fled next day, backpack laden, legs trembling on the trail. Fog trailed me far, reluctant. Back in Thimphu, I thought it over. Wrote thesis, omitting the thing in between, blaming hallucination. But no, city dogs strays on streets, stopped barking at me. They sat silent, eyes past my shoulder, like Drakmora. Under yellow street lamps, my shadow faded, barely reflecting in shop mirrors. I write this as a warning, perhaps to myself. Maybe just delusion from chronic insomnia. But tonight, silence engulfs my deli room. No insects, no wind at windows. And I feel something in between, whispering soundlessly. Perhaps, the most silent thing, has chosen me as its new abode.